And on the second day as well, yeah, good morning, Phil. And yeah, back in 2013 and also 2005, it also took just 2 days, because in history it's sometimes taken weeks or even months. There was one point going back many centuries when we were waiting something in the region of a year in order to find out the next pope. So it does show that there is a certain amount of coming togetherness within the Catholic Church. I have to say, I was surprised that we had somebody from North America, because there was a lot of memes being posted, and of course we heard Donald Trump in the news and that controversial picture. So I thought maybe somebody from South America, but of course he has a very strong connection with Peru. So we do have another Latin American sympathetic pope. When you consider that the popes up until Pope John Paul II were really all from Italy, so we've had a Polish pope, a German pope, a pope from Argentina, and now a Chicago-born pope. So this is really historical.
Are we expecting someone to turn up to the mic and deliver mass sounding like Al Capone? Because he has got a Chicago accent, but he is a polyglot as well. He speaks numerous languages.
Well, when I was listening to him yesterday, of course, and he was speaking Latin, so I haven't heard him speak, obviously, in his American voice, but I've heard his brother speak. We've heard friends that he went to school with. In fact, they were actually saying yesterday, in terms of a reunion, because they're all about to turn 70, is it appropriate to call on the man who's just been made Pope and say, we went to school together 50, 60 years ago, would you like to meet up? But actually, this is seismic, because you think how many American Catholics there are in the world. It's 1.6 billion million in the world altogether. So this is actually a really momentous thing to have probably the first Pope whose primary language is English.
And that conclave, the fact it came up with its decision after such a short amount of time. We were discussing how, in a way, it doesn't want to be seen like it's rushing it, but then it doesn't want to be seen that it's taking so long. It shows division. This seems pretty forthright that Robert Prevost was in front of people's minds all the way through.
Well, of course, retrospectively, I think that's right, because when we were talking on Tuesday morning, I said, well, I think, 3 to 4 days tops. And then afterwards I reflected and I thought, I think they'll have to have done it by Friday, and indeed Thursday night. It felt like the right time. It showed, because they had to have a 2/3 majority. They'd clearly come around a candidate. Of course, we don't know, because it's all done in secret session. We don't know if they're Googling the candidates, how well that they're known. So we don't know, obviously, all that much about him, but it's certainly been received very well by Catholics who feel that he's a good continuity candidate with Pope Francis.
And it's been an interesting time for global news coverage. Every time a Pope is elected, it seems that we have more 24-hour news channels. We have a greater appetite for knowing what's going on, social media and the like. For instance, I was glued to my phone yesterday while I was making dinner and then doing a bit of ironing of school uniforms, and I'm thinking, hang on, I'm watching a chimney about 1,000 miles away, and there's commentators padding out, filling things. And this was on the BBC. I mean, I'd heard CBS describe the situation as the Cardinals raw dogging the conclave, in that they were going without any form of communication, much like the craze of raw dogging flights, where you don't look at a book or a TV or your phone. They were doing that. It seems that the whole idea of a conclave has been brought into popular culture.
Well, also, of course, in relation to the film, which couldn't be more prescient, but also you're absolutely right about the smoke, because for an hour yesterday we knew that there was a new pope, but we didn't know who that was, and we didn't know from what part of the world they hailed. And when you think in any political decision, when you think that normally we have a candidate, and of course in the case of America, we obviously had a switch of candidates on the Democrat side, but still a good 3 months before the election. But here, there'd been an election, we didn't really know who the candidates were. We assumed it'd be one of the 180 or 190 cardinals who were voting, and then of course we suddenly found out that it was Robert Prevost. And I think a lot of people were delighted, but also surprised, because when we were chatting just on Wednesday morning, and I gave you a list of a couple of candidates, his was not on my list.
Yeah, so once again, if you're a favourite in a papal race, you probably will not finish it. We shall see. Now, we know about Robert Prevost's Chicago links, the fact he worked for many years as a missionary in Peru, but he hasn't escaped controversy. There's still rumblings of child abuse claims that are going on against his time in Peru, and similar in a way to what we've seen with Archbishop Justin Welby recently, how potentially he was aware of doings going on while he was in charge.
And I'm afraid that's absolutely right, because back in November, of course, the film Conclave came out the night before, or at least I saw a preview screening the night before the Archbishop of Canterbury resigned. And so it does feel that these are the sort of questions that people will be asking. But also, you see, it's very difficult to bury truth. I mean, it's been possible to do it for many decades. And the trouble is there will be an avalanche. I don't mean with respect specifically to the new Pope, but generally, of course, every candidate is going to be checked off. Everyone's going to be saying, did they do the right thing 30, 40 years ago? So I'm afraid that although there's a lot of initial excitement, people will, of course, be doing exactly as you say and looking into the background of the candidate. And there's not much we can do now, of course. The Pope will be here. He's 69. He could be in place for a good 10 or 15 or even 20 years.
Yes, a lot of scrutiny onto him. And as you say, 69 years old, it seems that we've got a Pope now for the long term.
Well, that's right, because Pope John Paul II was, I think, 58, and he was there for 27 years. But his two successors were both in their mid-70s when they were elected. So I was interested yesterday because they were talking about him being a very young Pope, and that's before we heard the age of 69. But it was only, a decade and a half ago, if you were Bob Dole or you were John McCain, being around 70 was seen as a barrier to holding high office. But in the papacy, it's quite normal practice to be well into your 70s when you get the top job.
Well, it's making us all here at BBC Radio Kent feel a lot younger anyway, which can be a good thing. So the Lord moves in mysterious ways. Chris Deasy, thank you so much. Honorary Reader in Theology and Religious Studies at the University of Kent, keeping us abreast of how the new Pope has come to office. Robert Prevost, now known as Pope Leo XIV. Good morning from me, Phil. It is breakfast here on BBC Radio Kent.